Hello, BookTube. It's Eric. I am back. And as you can see, there's books. So we're going to go through these pretty quickly. I'm going to start off by talking about let's talk about stuff I've gotten so I can get this pile down. Today, went to a couple thrift stores, picked this up, 50 cents for a compilation of Great American Detective Stories. I'm sure that I have some of this. In fact, I know I have some of these things, but it's nice to have it in one volume. Look at those names. You got Hammett, you got Ellery Queen, you got Ray Bradbury, you got Donald Westlake, Ed McBain. We'll talk about him at some point. So good stuff. I'm going to look forward to checking this out. All right. I also picked up a copy of Phoenix Noir. These are noir short story compilations. I don't know much about the Phoenix one, but I found it at a thrift store and decided to snatch that up. Okay. So these are a couple of things that were sent to me by somebody who knows. They sent them to me. Spillane, Survival Zero, Carter Brown, The $1 Million Babe. I've not read this one. John D. McDonald's Pale Grey Guilt, and Guns of Heaven, which I have not read. So thank you for sending me these. Honestly, I do have copies of a couple of these, but some of them I don't. So those are appreciated, though. All right. Never read John Sanford. I know there's people out there that like his stuff. This sounded kind of like the movie Nightcrawler from a couple years ago, which I really liked. So I snagged that. Walter Mosley's A Red Death. It's E.Z. Rollins novel. I think this is maybe the second or third one. And I like these early editions with these kind of neat, like 40s, 50s style covers. I'm going to grab the wrong bag here because I have to keep holding it open. All right. Mission Impossible movie tie-in. Because how often do you get a book that's based on screenplay that's by Robert Towne, or partly by Robert Towne, he of Chinatown fame? All right. So I did not realize this was a Michael Shea novel, and I know that name. This looks more horror than maybe science fiction, which is what it's listed as, or fantasy, but I just like the cover and those things that I just grabbed. So I'm going to do a little more research on this one. Okay, let's put that over there. Put that into my to-be research pile. Okay, Paperback from Hell. I don't like snakes, but I've been seeing this one at a particular thrift store around here for a while. And it says science fiction, but this definitely looks more horror-ish, so I snagged that. This one just had a cool cover. It's one of those deals where I was at a thrift store, and if you fill a shopping bag, it's $2. So with paperbacks, or not with fiction paperbacks, so that's what I was grabbing. So at the same place, I got a nice copy of The Michigan Murders. Had a professor in college who was partners with the uncle of the killer. If you read the book, you can figure out what I'm talking about. This is about one of the first big serial killer cases in America, in Michigan mainly, southeast Michigan where I live, Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti area. This took place back in the late 60s, and I've read this. This is pretty great. This is kind of the gold standard for true crime serial killer books. This is from the 70s, and yeah, I actually, true story. So I had this professor who had retired as number 3 in the Michigan State Police. His partner's nephew was the killer, or the person who was in jail for a killing, claims he didn't do it. Years later, I was working at the University of Michigan in their security department, and one of the guys that I worked with, who was my partner in that he was in the building next door to me, his father was one of the cops that jumped the gun and interviewed the suspect before they were ready, and after the fact, the suspect was seen getting rid of what might have been trophies. So this is an interesting book, highly recommended. If you have any interest at all in true crime, especially serial killers, the real thing before it became this played out 80s construct. All right, let's go with, I've heard about this. This is Infamous. There was a paperback copy, so I snagged it. All right. A whole bunch of Stephen King stuff I found. I had not heard of this, apparently short story collection. So that goes in my Stephen King collection. So I'm not sure what this one's going to go. It's going to go either in my Stephen King collection or it's going to go in my movie tie-in collection. I have not read a lot of these King doorstops, but maybe someday I'll get to them. I like some of his writing. Some of his writing I don't care for. An old copy of Dark Tower. This is maybe an early printing. I didn't really look, but this is the cover I remember. Speaking of King, somebody was getting rid of their horror collection, so I snagged those along with this one, which is one of the, for a while it's been one of the more valuable Stephen King books because Hardcase put it out in a limited run. There was no idea how many of these were going to sell. I've listened to the audiobook of this. It's okay, but it's cool to have these. And, yep, of course, Stephen King's going to be number 13, right? The story is that they asked him to blurb the book, and he said, blurb a Hardcase book, and he said, well, can I write one? Also picked up a copy of the first Corey. This one's actually for a friend of mine. I know exactly who I'm going to give a copy of this to. There was a short-lived TV series in the last year that I really liked, but some Corey fans didn't. But I think this series is worth checking out if you like crime novels and hitman novels and things that are pretty just driven story, plot-driven crime story stuff. So, anyways, moving on. Another one I really like. This is originally from the, I believe the 50s. I really liked this one when I read it, so I snagged a copy of that. Lauren Esselman, another local author. We're gonna have some local talk today. Probably right now the greatest living Michigan crime author. Found a nice copy of Whiskey River. So this one I grabbed because of the cover. That's just a cool looking Western cover. Wamba is a former LAPD police officer who became a writer, most famous for Onion Field. I don't believe I had a copy of Hollywood Crows. I have Hollywood Station. So I've been wanting to get to this one eventually. So I snagged that. All right. Some stuff that's left over from previous trips that I didn't show. I picked up this Tom Wolfe book, The Weekend That Passed. I'm dropping books over here. And, yeah, saw that and snagged it. A old library copy of Dennis Wheatley's The Ka of Guilford Hillary. This is one of those 70s black magic crime or horror novels. This is very much a Paperbacks from Hell or proto-paperback from hell. Okay. L. Neil Smith's Probability Brooch. L. Neil Smith is a controversial author to be blunt about it. Libertarian science fiction writer. I've read his stuff. I actually have a reprint of this from when that was reissued probably a decade or more ago. But I found this early copy and I snagged that. This just looked like horror silliness. Oh, I totally forgot that I had snagged a copy. Another Harold Robbins, The Betrayers. Novelization of The Rocketeer. Don't do a lot of YA looking stuff, but this looked kind of like YA horror. In fact, it says it is on the spine, so I snagged that. Okay. Yes, and I'm trying to move stuff around here. Larry Block. If you haven't read the Bernie Robards or the Matt Scudder books and you like comedy, crime, caper, these are highly recommended. You like post-70s detective stuff, highly recommend the Matt Scudder novels. All right. I don't have a copy of Coma, which is Robin Cook's, I think, first paperback from hell, so I snagged that. This is a pretty clean, early-looking edition of the book. Let's see what year this is from. It says 77, so this is a first printing potentially, and it's really clean and nice. So this goes in my Paperbacks from Hell collection. Got this, I don't know, a week ago. A reading copy of John D. McDonnell's Contrary Pleasure, because its spine's kind of jacked up a little bit, but it's perfectly okay for reading. That one there, that one there. Let's see, that one there. I picked this one up because of the cover. Ross Thomas, The Eighth Door. Not read any Ross Thomas. I've heard a lot about him. This appears to be probably this is an Avon Summit. I guess this is the late 70s, early 80s because it's got the red edging. First printed in 1980. I've got a couple of his books I haven't read, but I've always heard good things about him, so I've wanted to check some out. I snagged that. Okay, what do we got? Hey, look. Snagged a Tales of Cthulhu Mythos, H.P. Lovecraft, Volume 1. So what is in here? This is a bunch of authors besides Lovecraft. You got Call of Cthulhu, you got August Derleth, you got Frank Belloc Long, Robert E. Howard. I love that Robert E. Howard story, by the way. That's a favorite of mine. I read that years and years ago. Henry Kuttner, who I've not really read, but I know much about, or a little bit about, Frank Belloc Long. So this is kind of a classic Lovecraft compilation from the 70s, 80s. Sometimes you see these around. Oh, it's paperback outlet trade-in from Warren, Michigan. That place is no longer there, I believe. But I like seeing stamps like that. It's like a little archaeological artifact about where these books have been. Like I said, somebody's horror collection got donated. This is a little bit jacked up, but I don't really care because this is a reading copy for me. This is John Russo, who was co-writer of Night of the Living Dead, and he wrote the story Return of the Living Dead, which I'm hearing doesn't have much to do with the film, but I've always wanted to check it out. I found this for a dime, so I'm okay with it being a little jacked up. And hey, there's a Roger Ebert quote on the back. I'm going to guess that was probably out of context. This looks like some Blair Witch tie-in nonsense. I'll take a look. I'm at that point when sometimes I do snag these tie-in publications. For instance, I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, which is legit a good book. And when I see these, I will snag them. I don't recommend the movie. I do recommend, however, Omega Man. It's flawed, but I think it's more entertaining. I have not seen the Vincent Price film. John Shirley, horror writer, screenwriter, co-screenwriter of The Crow. I believe he worked in at least one Elm Street film. So I saw one of his books, and I just figured I'd snag that. Tie-in Talented Mr. Ripley and Warm Bodies. These go into my tie-in collection. I recall this being a kind of cute film, so snag the book. All right, where do I go from here? Let's do this one. Read this way back in the day, back in high school. I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I enjoyed it. Drugs. It's a drug. Yeah, it's a police story about drugs. Police procedural. So he had written this book, Balefire, that was gifted to me years ago, which I had read and liked. So I'd pick this up. I wonder how this is going to play to me as a 40-something rather than a teenager. Okay, we're getting down to it here. So I showed already that first Corey. Here's that's Max Allan Collins. Here's Max Allan Collins with Mickey Spillane. This is a series of Mike Hammer books that he was finishing. So I've snagged a couple of these when I've seen them. And he also does a lot of tie-in work. So he wrote a Bones novel. So I snagged those as well. All right. I'll show this one. This is a hardback from hell. I don't have a lot of John Saul in my collection. I've got a couple things I need to read, but I found it looks like an early printing of a hardback that I thought, why not? We'll try that out. All right. So this looks like a paperback from hell, and apparently it is. This is from '93. Found this, and hey, it's signed to somebody. That's kind of cool. Vampire Apocalypse. Put it right next. I'm not going to put it next to I Am Legend because that book is more than a vampire apocalypse book. It's about changing culture and changing the generation. And but at any rate, I picked that up. Okay, somebody's George V. Higgins collection, and I don't believe I have any of these three. That's looking very 70s. That's maybe looking very 80s printing, and this is definitely a 70s printing. He of Friends of Eddie Coyle fame, great writer. I've got a bunch of his stuff that I need to get to. and this bag is getting full. All right. So the personal stuff, more personal stuff. Found a copy of Megan Abbott's Die a Little. This is one of her only books I haven't read. I've got a copy. I've just not gotten to it. I know that she's not particularly, I don't want to say happy, but I think that she would rather this came out differently. This was her first book, so I've been a little hesitant to read this one. So, but I'm going to get to it eventually. All right. So when I was in junior high school, I met this kid. And I say kid because he was 2 years younger than me. I was 12 and he was 10. And he was born a couple days before my little brother. And he was in the school program I was in. He was 10-year-old in the 7th grade taking 9th grade math. And we became friends. He was part of a group of friends that I had. And we went to high school together. And we kind of remained in the same social circle through part of college. And kind of drifted apart. Not for any bad reason, just our lives went different directions. And I didn't live in the area any longer, and he didn't live in the area any longer. When we get together, it's like seeing, part of your childhood. And for a long time, we were very close. And wow, I didn't realize this. So I know that he's written a couple of books and made a movie or two, and spent a good amount of time doing things for This American Life. And I found a copy of Dave Rothbard's My Heart is an Idiot, which he talks about some of his high school romances, which I was there for, and college ones, which I was there for. So that's kind of interesting. I know that I'm not mentioned in this book, but some people I know are. So I've been meaning to read this for a long time. And apparently it also comes with a CD of his adventures in public radio. So from This American Life and other places. So I'm going to look forward to checking that out. Okay. That's it for this time. Hopefully be back soon with something a little bit different. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.